What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the Sixers Digest YouTube channel. My name is Barnard, and there is a recent quote from Sixers head coach Nick Nurse floating out there that made my ears perk up a little bit about the potential of the Sixers lineup. In this video, I want to talk about why I think PJ Tucker could end up with the guy with the short end of the stick when it comes to the Sixers starting lineup, and just dig into Nurse's comments overall and where the team stands up as far as depth. Now, before I dive fully into it, I do want to make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 85.3% of you guys watching this video have not subscribed just yet. We got plenty of big plans ahead for the real NBA season. Preseason is almost over already. That the NBA season is right around the corner, less than 2 weeks now. So I am excited to dig in. I'll be in here start to finish with you guys, bringing the best Sixers content that I possibly can. And I hope you guys are with me every step of the way. So for today's topic, let's begin by kicking things off. I want to start by showing this question to Nick Nurse that was asked right before the second preseason game of the Sixers, and talk about why I thought it was a little bit interesting.
Spots do you think are up for grabs?
I don't have an exact number here for you, but I would say that you get a pretty good idea of who our top 5 or 6 possible starters are, right? I think that there's a plethora of wing guys if they're healthy, right? There's a bunch of guys there that are who's gonna fit there, right? I think the Pat Bev, Jaden Springer kind of tough guard off the bench is a battle. I think that for House, Oubre, Green, there's 4. So there's 6 more guys in the battle. I mean, I would say that, those top 6 guys are there, and as long as they're healthy, and Paul Reed's probably there. Positionally, I think Mo Bamba's in a battle with, in that little Paul Reed, PJ Tucker, Tobias Harris 4-5 spot. There you go, there's a bunch of battles. I can't line them all up for you right now, but that's probably about 13 guys. I mentioned that.
So let me start by saying that I think all competition is good competition, and the fact that these guys aren't having this role just handed to them is a good thing in the long run. I believe as professional athletes, these guys need to be competing, need to be kept pushing, have to have guys looking over their shoulders, and overall that brings out the best of their abilities. That if you're not built for these big moments, for these tight competition in training camp when you're competing for a spot, you're probably not going to be built for the big moments in competition when the lights are the brightest and it is at the biggest stage. A lot of what Nick Nurse said there was interesting. The first thing that perked my ears up was the comment saying that they basically have 6 starters, that they have 6 guys they consider starting caliber. Now, who exactly is that, to be honest? Let's begin by looking at the roster of last year with the Sixers, taking a look at the guys who started games. Number 1, James Harden starting 58 out of 58 games that he played. Joel Embiid starting 66 out of 66 games that he played. Tyrese Maxey started 41 out of the 60 games that he played in. Tobias Harris leading the Sixers with 74 games started, all 74 games that he played in. D'Anthony Melton also started in 58 games out of the 77 that he played in. PJ Tucker started all 75, so he actually led the Sixers, my mistake there, with 75 starts. Shake Milton started 11 out of the 76 games that he played in. He is no longer with the Sixers. He is with the Timberwolves, and that kind of takes the main things there. So the Sixers kind of had a 6-man starting rotation last year. We know there was the brief point in time where Maxey was coming off the bench, where D'Anthony Melton ascended into the starting lineup. D'Anthony Melton was more or less a filler when guys were not there. Guys like James Harden missing, like Tyrese Maxey when he had his little foot injury, and other things that popped out throughout the time. So Melton has kind of been this guy looking over the shoulders. But what is it that Nick Nurse is specifically referring to? Let's next shift to what the official moves are for the Sixers, or the changes to the roster for this year. Javonte Smart, David Duke Jr., each on exhibit 10 years. They will be with the Delaware Bluecoats this year. Kelly Oubre Jr. on a minimum. Danny Green on a minimum. Both guys that have looked pretty sharp in preseason and will have a role. Montrezl Harrell has been re-signed. He tore his ACL, unfortunately, so will be out for the year. Azuolas Tubelis on a 2-way contract. He will primarily be playing with the G League this year as well. Filip Petrusev signed as a free agent on a non-guaranteed deal. He is not a lock to officially make the roster, but I will say that he has looked better than I expected through the first 2 preseason games. Paul Reed is more or less the star of the offseason. He was re-signed to a pretty significant deal for Paul Reed, so the expectations for him have increased this year. Patrick Beverley also brought in on a minimum. Mo Bamba on a minimum. Both solid rotational pieces. Pat Bev especially I am excited for. Ricky Council IV also brought in a 2-way, as well as Terquavion Smith. Both guys I like quite a bit. And then James Harden, of course, exercising his player option. So while there was a lot that happened there, really not too much of substance. That for the most part, this roster is going to be the same as last year. Now, James Harden continues to be the biggest X factor in this. Who knows what his plans are for here? at the time of recording this, and from what we can gather from everything right now, is James Harden is in training camp. He is on his best behavior. He is playing up to the level that would expect. He is giving the attitude that one would hope for from a professional. And while he still desires a trade, if the season starts, the expectation will be he plays for the Sixers. So to look at it from there, let's assume that is the case. And you know what? Let's take a look at the starting lineup for both of the preseason games. It was Tyrese Maxey, Patrick Beverley, PJ Tucker, Tobias Harris, and Paul Reed. Now, I'll start by noting that Joel Embiid, James Harden, Furkan Korkmaz were out of both games. D'Anthony Melton missed the first one, and Daniel House missed the second one. Of course, James Harden and Joel Embiid are the two focal points there. And yes, by the way, it was a joke referring to Furkan Korkmaz as a star in that last video. I hope you guys caught that, but I had a couple comments. So that was a joke in that one. But for James Harden and Joel Embiid are the two superstars that obviously have their spots locked. As long as they are on the Sixers, they will be starting. That specifically referring to with Harden. Tobias Harris, a guy that I can't see being benched, a guy that is playing out the final year of his contract, feels like he's been in Philadelphia forever, has seen his role change more and more. I would like to see Tobias run with some bench units this year, see what can happen if we can mix a combination like that, but I do think that he will serve majority of the time with these starters. Tyrese Maxey, I don't think you can put him back on the bench at this point. It's very clear that he is ascending to absolute NBA stardom. I've been blown away through these first two preseason games that it looks like he's taken another stride in his development. He looks more confident. He's seeking out his own shot. He's got more polish to his game. I feel like he's reading the game a little better. He's trying as a playmaker. It's still a work in progress, but there is progress nonetheless there. So Maxey is the fourth guy. Then we look at that fifth spot. PJ Tucker was the guy last year. We know who PJ Tucker is at this point in time. And in fact, I am happy that PJ Tucker was on the team last year. I mean, if there would not be the moment of him yelling in Joel Embiid's ear, having that big time moment in the playoffs, and for the playoffs is really the sole reason that PJ Tucker was brought in. It would not offend me in the slightest if we just put this 38-year-old man on ice for the next several months until the playoff time. I'm okay with that plan. PJ, to his credit, is a guy who likes to compete on a nightly basis, who does show up, who does do his job as a high level, is a grit work guy, a dirty work guy, but the Sixers have a little more of that. So who's that sixth guy he's exactly referring to? Is it Paul Reed, who has these expectations this year? I do think there's a world where Paul Reed replaces PJ Tucker in the starting lineup. I like the concept of adding a guy like like Paul Reed with a little more size, a little more athleticism, a guy willing to do the dirty work in a different way from PJ Tucker. PJ Tucker much more of a set the tone from a leadership standpoint, getting guys' faces, yelling at guys. Paul Reed's much more of a lead by the example, that he's diving for loose balls. He's contesting every single shot he can. He brings an energy that this team also needs. But I don't know if it's that. And a name that's standing out to me is Patrick Beverley. There has not been a ton of expectations thrown on Pat Bev at this point. He's a guy that, for the most part, one of the favorite teammates across the entire NBA. Guys like to play with him. They like when he's on his team. They hate to play against him. He has started both preseason games. Obviously, no James Harden, which is incredibly relevant to this conversation. But there is a part of me that was watching both these games and seeing how important Pat Bev seems to be. When we think about what Nick Nurse is bringing to the Sixers, the culture he's trying to change, the strategic changes that he is attempting to make when we talk about offensive and defensive strategy, defensively is especially where I think Pat Bev is going to be a tone setter for this Sixers team. I'm watching the way that he's calling out sets, he's having guys switch, he's talking through possessions on the defensive end, and that looks very valuable to this team. Nick Nurse is a defensive-minded coach. He's a guy who likes to have the tone set on this side of the floor. Could Pat Bev be the key to doing that? And from a other standpoint, while I'm complaining about Tyrese Maxey not being able to be a good enough playmaker, is putting Patrick Beverley next to him enough? Is that a guy that can kind of pick up the load there if Tyrese Maxey can't handle it? And Pat Bev is also a guy that can defend bigger than his size, that we saw him match up against Jason Tatum already in the preseason. Obviously, I don't want him wearing out his legs in just the preseason. We have a long season ahead of us. But that was still nice to see. That is something that is an option in the arsenal. So I don't know what the Sixers' whole competition is. And when you dig deeper, guys like Kelly Oubre have a chance. Guys like Danny Green, who's been a starter on the Sixers team before. What is the role for them? Overall, I think things will settle themselves out. This is obviously still preseason. We have yet to see the team as its complete picture painted. I think it's probably likely that the Sixers start out the season with the same starting lineup as last year. But PJ Tucker is a guy that I keep circling back to, thinking like, as we look at where the Sixers team needs to expand, as we look at the untouchable guys for who cannot be benched, Is PJ Tucker's job in danger? Could he be a guy that is coming off the bench this year? Is there that much loss if that is the case? To each of these questions, I'm really considering that maybe there is something to just resting PJ Tucker, making sure he is ready for the playoffs. He brought it last year. He absolutely did, and that is what the Sixers needed to do. I believe he had a season high in that elimination game. He had double digits. He hit 3 threes and had another point at least. I think that was a season high for him. But the bottom line is he brought it when it mattered most. That's all the Sixers are hoping for. So is there a little bit of appeal to putting PJ Tucker on the shelf, seeing what there is in B-Ball Paul, seeing what there is in a lineup with Pat Bev, with the starters? There might just be. So we will see from here. The regular season is inching closer, but I am intrigued by these comments by Nick Nurse. I do love all the competition that is coming out of training camp. There is just a different environment, a different attitude, a different approach to this overall roster that I am excited by. It's breathing a little life into me as the Sixers season approaches, and I can't wait to break down things every step of the way. Let me know your comments. I want to hear your guys' starting five for these Sixers. If you have to name it right now, with James Harden still on this roster, who would your starting five be? Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys once again for watching this video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so you're not missing out on any content, and I will continue to talk with you right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.